FBI Director Christopher Wray was on Capitol Hill where he was testifying in front of the House Judiciary Committee. He was asked about a variety of subjects, but it's what he said about the shooter's motivation in the attempted assassination of Donald Trump that's got a lot of people talking. Wait until you hear what the FBI found on the shooter's laptop. I'll tell you all about it. It wouldn't be a House Judiciary Committee hearing without some antics by the Republicans. And Congressman Matt Gaetz decided to waste FBI Director Christopher Wray's time by asking him about the mental state of President Biden. Listen to this nonsense and how Christopher Wray swats it all down.
So when did you notice his decline?
In my interactions, in my role, all my interactions with the current president have been completely professional.
Right, but I mean the cognitive decline. I'm not saying he treated you unprofessionally, just maybe not picking things up as quickly as he used to.
Again, I don't meet with him very often, but what you're describing is not something that I've observed during my interactions with him.
So Matt Gaetz not getting anywhere with this ridiculous line of questioning, Christopher Wray not taking the bait and not confirming that President Biden has declined, which is such a ridiculous thing to say. But that didn't stop Matt Gaetz from trying to drag the vice president into this, since she's now the nominee for president. Listen to this.
In the work where the vice president's also present, like you say, there's like more than half the time there's these briefings, she's there too?
I don't know if I'd said more than half the time. Certainly there have been times where she's been present. There have been other times where she hasn't.
I take you at your word when you say this is the most complicated threat environment you've ever observed over a long career in law enforcement. And I'm just kind of wondering, with this assassination attempt, with the invasion at our border, with all the Hamas that have been let in that you've talked about and briefed about, like, is Biden up to it? And if he's not up to it, and you're a guy who's been regularly briefing him, like who's been in on this conspiracy to hide the real Joe Biden from all of us for years? It never occurred to you that this guy wasn't up to it in all these briefings you did?
As I said, my briefings with the president have all been completely fine.
Were they between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.?
He's asked questions. There hasn't been anything of note in the area that you're talking about.
Yeah, did you ever have to brief him before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m.? We hear those are his good hours.
I've certainly times that I have briefed have included outside those hours.
Right. Okay.
These Republicans are so desperate to attack Kamala Harris that they're now saying that she was part of a conspiracy to hide the mental state of Joe Biden from the American people. And of course, this is nonsense. Joe Biden is perfectly fine to be president of the United States, and nobody was hiding anything from anybody. But the Republicans have been caught flat-footed by Joe Biden stepping down from the nomination and handing it over to Kamala Harris, that they have to rewrite their entire playbook, and so they're desperately throwing everything at the wall, and nothing is sticking. The last 3 or 4 weeks have been spent talking about President Biden, which is a disaster for the November elections because we want this to be a referendum on Donald Trump. But the excitement and energy of Kamala Harris taking over has allowed the Democrats to shift the focus back to Donald Trump and specifically his Project 2025. A Democrat in the hearing was able to ask Christopher Wray his thoughts on how Project 2025 would negatively impact the FBI.
There's even a proposal to replace many of those 38,000 dedicated civil servants who work for the FBI, replace them with a MAGA group that has pledged its allegiance to Donald Trump. What danger would that bring to the FBI if that were to happen?
Well, again, I haven't read or reviewed this thing that you're referring to.
Assuming what I say is true.
But the FBI is made up of 38,000 dedicated career law enforcement professionals. It has no political appointees of any kind, unless you count me as a nominee of the former president.
Either,
I don't think that should change.
I think
that is
a bunch
that is
of MAGA
part of how we do our work.
Being the employees of the FBI.
We're coming up on 116 years of the FBI, and that's the way it has been for 116 years.
It would be crazy to take 38,000 MAGA loyalists and put them at the FBI. That's frightening. That's what Project 2025 proposes, and I'm glad to know that you are not with that program. And with that, I yield back.
Yeah, I'm not with that either. I'd rather have the career professionals who know what they're doing at the FBI than a bunch of MAGA loyalists. Sounds like a nightmare. With that being said, the FBI director did reveal some new information coming from the investigation, and that includes hints at what the shooter's motivation was that were found on his laptop. But before that, the FBI director talked about a drone that the shooter had and what he did with it, and more information on those explosives that were found in his car. Watch this.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area for about 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away, yes.
Yards. Okay, that's important information. What about the bombs that we've heard about in the shooter's car?
So again, the FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices. Yep. We've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call sophisticated operations, or this? I don't know. That's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
Yeah, I think it's. We've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely. And so to that point, in addition to the 2 devices that we recovered out of his vehicle, there were receivers for those 2 explosive devices with the devices. And then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times, at a moment, it looks like because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous.
But the biggest revelation came when the FBI director revealed one of the searches that the suspect had done on his laptop.
One of the things that I can share here today that has not been shared yet is that we've just in the last couple of days found that from our review, to your point about devices, analysis of a laptop that the investigation ties to the shooter reveals that on July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy? And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. That is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
So it's starting to look more and more like this troubled individual, Thomas Crooks, who was a registered Republican, was just looking for a high-profile figure to assassinate in order to leave his mark on the world. We know that he searched for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and a couple other individuals, and there just happened to be a Trump rally near where he lived coming up soon. So that seems to be what motivated him. Obviously, the investigation has to continue, but the Republicans aren't going to get their dream of a Biden-Harris supporter who is jacked up on hateful rhetoric from the left that decided he had to take out Donald Trump. Now, that's not stopping the right from spreading conspiracy theories that there were multiple shooters or the Secret Service was in on it to try to take out Donald Trump, which is all total nonsense. And thankfully, Joe Biden stepping down as the Democratic Party's nominee and handing that over to Kamala Harris, and all the energy and excitement around Kamala have taken away the headlines and the attention from Donald Trump and his shooting, and the right is not getting as much from that story as they had hoped. Whatever boost in support Donald Trump got from this shooting that took place a couple of weeks ago is now gone. The energy and excitement of the Kamala Harris campaign has completely taken over, and I can't wait for November to get here so we can finally begin to move on from this MAGA nightmare.